Welcome into Object of the Game. I'm Maureen Kyle with Chuck Kyle. This is a show where we talk about how the field, whatever field that is, we could call it a basketball court, we could call it whatever, but the field, the playing field is a classroom. And those life lessons that you learn while you're playing a sport, whether it's when you're a kid, maybe a little bit later in life, no matter how far you went in your sports career, it leads into life lessons that you use in your real career. And today we are taking a deep dive into leadership. And Dad, you've always had a unique perspective on leadership as coaching, just in case anybody isn't aware, coaching at St. Ignatius High School for all 50 years that you were there. Leadership is one of those things that everybody uses at some point in their life.
Well, I don't believe in the cliche. A leader he's a born leader. Somebody's a born leader. I don't believe that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. It goes back to the monarchy days. I think it's just the idea is simply that in some arena, some field of career, whatever, that a person finds their talents are good there. And also, typically, as you prepare yourself and come to understand that field better, that you have the courage to sit there and go, okay, somebody's got to step forward and lead the group. Because there's always these moments when people are looking around like, who's going to step up and do this? And you can look in history. History is filled with people who really didn't know they were going to do this, but they felt they had to step up. And it's consistent. It's a consistent message. When they step forward, it was not an ego thing at all.
Yeah.
It was simply, I'm being looked at to serve these people.
Yeah.
And to me, leadership is the understanding. It's a love that we'll talk about, that you serve to be the head coach. You serve to be the governor. You serve to be the president. You know, it's the way we word it, I don't think people always understand that, though. Because if you step to that, it's not an ego thing at all. It shouldn't be. You'll run into problems if it's an ego thing. It's that type of care.
Yeah.
And we'll discuss that as these shows go on. Because it will have a number of people that can talk about that.
So if you... In our pilot episode of the podcast, you explained, and that's a different form than what we have going on right here. But in the pilot episode, you talked about when you first coached. You were young, so I mean, even though you say there aren't born leaders, like you felt that coaching calling early on.
All right, I at some point early in college, at that point, there were more than half the people in my...
Well, I'm talking about when you were a kid.
Oh. Yeah.
8th grade.
Oh, goodness. Yeah. I
mean, that was the first time you had to, be put in that position to coach.
Now, you're talking about specifically.
Specifically.
For some reason, we were going to play in the city championship game, okay? And, typically, they signal plays in. Well, for some reason, that game, they said, no, Kyle, you're going to call the defensive calls. And I figured they were going to signal them in. They go, no, we're not signaling. No, you're going to look first down 10, you're going to make a call. It's your choice. And second, third down. Oh, okay, I'll do that. I never asked why, but years later, I kind of figured out why they didn't want the other coach to see the signals and know what we were going to do.
Yeah.
But the fact that they trusted me to do that. I mean, there's all these other guys on the team.
Yeah.
I look back going, what did they saw into me that I understood it, I guess, and that the other people respected me, the other players. If I made that call, they would respect what I did. So that gave me the first idea of maybe I should coach.
Yeah.
Maybe I should, because I really enjoyed it that day. We shut the other team out. How about that?
Yeah. Right. Well, and I love that story because as we talked to our guest today, Brian Polian, with now he's with John Carroll University as their vice president of athletics and national engagement, but he's coached all sorts of football teams. Yeah. We're going to be talking to him, but about leadership and the trust that has to go into leadership and the trust that Gen Z, we're talking about this generation that is now that you are leading, you are coaching, if you're out there leading or coaching, but the way they think now and how trust is such a key component to being able to lead them.
Oh, sure. I mean, kids can watch football games, for instance, how many times a week? You know, there's only a couple days there aren't football games on. And so there's a lot of ways of, everybody seems to know what to do, but who's the leader? The leader, it's more than just, hey, what play should we call right now? Well, your guess is as good as mine, to be honest with you. You see what they do and you try it. But it's that confidence that the players can have. They trust. If they trust the coach, that makes a big difference. Okay, and if the coach can turn and go, that was my call, I'll own it. It was not good, and the players understand that, you've got a good scenario there. You've got atmosphere for success.
Yeah. So we're going to be talking about leadership all day today. So we will have much more with our guest, Brian Polian, when we return. Welcome back to Object of the Game. The landscape of collegiate sports is changing. What is it going to look like in the future with NIL? There have been a lot of questions about it, and our next guest is in the trenches with it. Dad, you have known him for a while.
Oh, quite a while, actually. Well, yes, he went to, has lived in Buffalo. A number of people out there will recognize the last name. This is Brian Polian. His dad was Bill Polian. And Bill was general manager for several teams, Super Bowl with the Indianapolis Colts, and just a number of teams. Also, you probably remember him on ESPN, doing a lot of commentary. But anyway, so needless to say, a football family would be fair to say. Okay, that's legit. Went to John Carroll University. There you go, a blue streak.
Blue streaks.
All right. What did obviously loved football, so he went into it and himself having an amazing career, I have to say. Various places, but I remember him from Stanford. We went out to visit. He took us around, and then been Notre Dame, trying for the national championship at Notre Dame, LSU.
Yeah,
LSU.
we've been some spots, huh?
We've
moved around a little
bit. Coach Nevada, right? I mean, okay.
But good to have you home.
Yes, because he is home now, and he's back at John Carroll University. He's the athletic director, and you've got other things.
We've got a silly higher ed title, but I'm the director of athletics, and it's all good.
I think, to explain some of these other things you do, it's just, hey, athletic director, high school people will understand what you mean. There's the guy.
Yeah.
Right? The coaches run to you and go, this, that, and so on, and which we all go through that. But it's just a pleasure to have you here, because I think, Brian, you give a very interesting perspective of, first of all, what's going on in college athletics. If we go back, what is it, 9 months ago? We sat at a luncheon downtown, and we heard about how the courts had changed a little bit in their perspective of the NIL. And I think, believe me, every time I talk to people, they're dumbfounded on what's going on.
Yeah.
So with your
so explain
here,
it.
You can holy smokes.
And it's changing every moment. Now that we're recording a couple weeks before this will, or at least a couple days, a couple weeks before this hits. But
right. But it's you've been to the LSUs and the Notre Dames, and then there's the John Carroll's Division III. Here we go.
So here we go is right. There's been a seismic change in college athletics over the last 4 years, quite honestly. I mean, I think back to, my time at Notre Dame as an assistant when we were, our recruiting efforts were focused on finding kids that fit the Notre Dame culture and cared about academics and all those different things. And in short order, it really has become, it's become a business. It's always been a business, but recruiting now is about simply making deals. Now, no one wants to call this pay for play, because there's not an institution in America that wants to identify their athletes as employees, because that opens up court cases and all sorts of of things that would make it so that only really 50 places could afford an athletic department. But the world has shifted. Now I take the stance that in 1990, you could look at one of your players at St. Ignatius and say, to graduate from Notre Dame or Michigan or Ohio State debt-free was a good deal. That's a good exchange
Sure.
for your services as an athlete. But in the year 2024, when coaches are making $10 million a year, when coordinators are making, the defensive coordinator, LSU, makes $2.5 million a year.
Wow.
And when you look at the TV money that's out there in the billions of dollars, let's not forget who, I don't want to call them labor, but this does not happen without the student athletes. So 35 years later, the scholarships, not enough anymore.
Wow.
Like there are billions of dollars being made here, and the athletes need to see some of this. So this was the birth of name, image, and likeness, was that EA Sports and the NCAA was putting a basketball player's likeness on a video game and making millions of dollars, and that basketball player didn't see a dime of it.
Yeah.
And ultimately the court said, this is not right. And the minute they did it, and I was in the space at the time, the minute they did it, we're like, people are going to find loopholes and they're going to find ways to simply turn this into pay for play. This is no longer about you're selling my jersey.
Yeah.
And I should see a percentage of that. It quickly turned into come to my school and go to the children's hospital 3 times in the first semester, and I'm going to pay you $500,000.
Wow.
And that's what this became
Yeah.
overnight.
Yeah.
So now everybody involved is trying to wrangle this, and the federal government's involved.
Yeah.
There have been court, the NCAA is like, for their last 16 in court or whatever the number is. They just keep losing. So it is a very complicated landscape that affects every level. It's not just Ohio State. It goes to Kent and Akron. Then it goes to Ashland.
Yeah.
And then it goes all the way to places like John Carroll, because name, image, and likeness is legal.
Yeah.
We don't give athletic scholarships, but if you have somebody that can get an NIL deal, we cannot stand in the way of that. So it is an incredibly complicated time. It changes monthly. So there were third parties that set up business proposals based on NIL in one form.
Sure.
And it has now shifted, and these businesses have almost become obsolete. So the landscape is changing under our feet.
There's got to be agents even, right?
Yes.
The NIL agents.
Yes.
That'll be out just like pro agents now almost.
So
in that ballpark.
This is a great analogy, Coach. It is a great analogy, and maybe our listeners would understand this. At the end of every season, the Browns, they have, let's round up and call it 60 players on the roster. It's if you count, some practice squad guys, it's probably closer to 70. At the end of every year, you probably have, I don't know, maybe 12 to 15 that are free agents at the end of that year that you have to make a decision. Okay, we're either going to let this player go. We're going to offer this player a longer term contract. We're pleased with the production. Right now, the way the NCAA is set up, let's call it 105 football players. There are 105 people that become free agents every 6 months because the transfer portal opens twice right now during the year, once in January and once in April. So you have 100 people that are coming to you saying, I can get a better deal somewhere else. I mean, how do you manage that?
Yeah.
It's nearly impossible.
You have to re-recruit the
Yes.
guys on your team.
Yes.
You have to bring them in and recruit them again.
Yes.
Hey, a degree from here. You're,
Yeah.
you're on your way to a degree. Yes, we're paying you. And all this is there's a number of people that have left college coaching, as I think people have noticed.
Yes.
This is just not the same at all.
Yeah.
And I'm a high school guy, all that. But I look back, let's say 15 years ago, and the NCAA could have solved this.
Yes.
They could have put this thing to bed 15 years ago.
Yeah. There's a gentleman by the name of Mark Emmert, the former president of the NCAA, who really just kept standing on amateurism. And it was just so hypocritical because of the amount of money that goes on the other side. I think most people look at me and think, well, he's automatically going to side, the athletes should not be compensated. They absolutely should be compensated, but there's got to be some structure. There's got to be some organization. And this leads into some bigger conversations. How does Title IX work into this? Right. Are we compensating people that in sports that are generating revenue? Because the reality of it is there's not that many of them. Mm-hmm. And then there are decisions being made across campuses all over America. There was a time maybe 10 years ago that Clemson built a brand new football building, and it's got a slide in the building.
Oh my gosh.
And it's got a little mini golf in the back, right? Because you were winning recruiting battles.
Yeah.
Oh, now you have to ask yourself the question, do I want to waste the money on a slide?
Yeah.
Or do I want to have that money somehow end up in my NIL compensation pool? Because I promise you right now, student athletes don't care about facilities. Where can I get the best deal?
The best deal. Oh my gosh. Well, we are just scratching the surface of all of this. We're going to talk more with Brian Polian and about name, image, likeness, all of the issues that come up, especially parents. If you have a student athlete that might make it into the collegiate level one day, you're going to want to pay attention to this. So we'll be right back. Welcome back. There is so much to talk about when it comes to name, image, likeness. We are just scratching the surface with Brian Polian, who is John Carroll University's Vice President of Athletics and National Engagement. A long title there, Brian.
Yeah. Higher ed, right?
Higher ed,
higher ed.
But we were just discussing, you were really rolling with how this has changed the way college athletics is going. And Dad, you brought up like 15 years ago, this could have been
I was
totally different.
Here's the high school guy. You would come in, you'd be looking, and so on like this. And we were just thrilled he was getting a scholarship.
Yes.
What a beautiful thing to tell the family, right? So on like that. But the idea was pretty clear there that, now wait a minute, there are some kids that when they go to college, they need money in their pocket.
Yeah.
And there are kids that came from poor families, right? They appreciate the scholarship, but here's a kid going to college and he has not a dime in his pocket.
Yeah.
No, that's wrong. Meanwhile, the universities are building buildings all over the place. People just funding all. But here's this kid who scored 2 touchdowns or was all conference, and he doesn't have any money.
So it's when you mentioned that this could have been solved a decade ago, this could have been solved.
Yes.
And when you think about simply the billions of dollars that come in TV revenue from both the NCAA basketball tournament and college football in general, we could have simply said for every full scholarship athlete, here's a stipend of 5,000, and then in the revenue making sports, say, okay, here's 10 or 12,000. This would have never reached the point that it reached right now. But we're also talking about an organization in the NCAA that was, no joke, Coach, and you understand this, they would litigate whether or not we put peanut butter on a bagel that we gave to an athlete that walked in. Because if it was a bagel in a wrapper, it was a snack. If the nutrition people put peanut butter and jelly on the bagel and closed it up, they considered that an extra meal, and it was a benefit that we were not allowed to give.
Wow.
So I think when it's important to remember that that's the kind of minutia that we were dealing with. Like, really, these are the things that we are talking about.
Yeah.
And I also think it's really important to remember, and most people don't know this, the NCAA is the universities. The university presidents are the ones that made these rules. They were the ones that held on to the concept of amateurism for so long when it clearly was not. They were reaping the benefits, the institutions were, and I remember my last year at Notre Dame, football profited nearly $80 million for the university.
Wow.
Now, to Notre Dame's credit, that money was not it wasn't reinvested completely into athletics. I mean, they took some of that money and it helped the general student body and it helped the academic programs. And I felt like it was in line with the mission. But how do you generate, $80 million at some of these institutions in a fiscal year and look at the young people that are producing it and saying they don't deserve any? But that went on for a long time. Now, the shift, what we are seeing right now, Generation Z is financially focused. They have lived through 2 recessions. They have watched their parents lose jobs, homes. Unfortunately, they've lived through seeing grandparents lose pensions. So the old, how does this kid leave Ohio? If you grow up here, you should want to be a Buckeye your whole life. We live in a world right now where they are being offered 5 and 6-figure deals a year to go and be members of football programs. Hey, I grew up a Buckeye is less important than I can help my mother and father right now. And we are seeing that. Like, I experienced it firsthand recruiting. I'm at a major SEC program, one of the top 15 brands in the entire place. Yeah. And a kid says, listen, if you don't meet this number, I'm going to a school that you would look at and say, really? Yeah. Listen, they don't care about the size of the stadium anymore. It's like, we've got families to take care of.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah, you have a book. I can see my dad even he's even
the first edition.
First edition. Yes.
Yeah. So
he's also an author. How about that?
I know.
Way to go. And
you have something bookmarked.
Teaching Generation Z. And this, what we've been talking about, these are the kids.
Yes.
These are the kids, Generation Z. And you're starting to talk about there's a different mentality.
Completely.
That here we are I'm a high school coach since the 80s, and it's different. That this area is a little bit different. What the world is presenting to them, is so different.
Okay, so you're an academic. People don't know that, but for all those years you were an academic. I actually said this to my father, who's a history major and taught history, and he's a child of World War II. My grandfather was a veteran. Gen Z has had it harder than anybody since the Greatest Generation. They've gone through a pandemic. They've gone through 2 recessions. They've gone through a technological age that has made it so that you can global terrorism. They've lived through it, and if you do a deep enough dive on YouTube, you can watch some horrific stuff happen from across the world. My father's answer to that was, well, they didn't have to storm the beaches in Normandy, which is true. But that does not mean Gen Z is not being shot at. They're being shot at in school. They're being shot at in their communities in ways that we didn't see. I mean, a school shooting right now, unfortunately, our society right now is too willing to accept that as just the nature of the world that we live in. So Gen Z has come up at a really difficult and unique time in our world's history, in our country's history, and their needs and what they need from us as leaders, mentors, teachers, coaches is so different than just 10, 12 years ago. And so I tell people all the time, if you're in the business of young people, you got to be able to do 3 things. You got to teach them how to be competent. Doesn't matter if we're teaching them how to produce a podcast. It doesn't matter if we're teaching math, if we're teaching football. We have to teach them to be competent. We have to make them feel autonomous. It's the Jedi mind trick, right? As a leader, I am not dictating for you what your journey should be, what your goals are, but I'm going to help guide you there. But they have to feel some autonomy. And then the last part is Gen Z is relationship driven. If you work with young people and you won't invest in building relationships with them, you got no chance.
Yeah.
And so that's been for guys like me. I'm not 50, but I'm not 45 either, right? Like, but raised by an old school guy.
Yeah.
That, hey, he's the coach, whatever he says, just because I'm in charge means that I deserve your trust and respect. Like, all those things have changed.
Yeah. I was reading some of the chapters that you were talking about with leadership. And I think that this is whether you're coaching, parenting, or you're an executive at a company, what you were writing about and some of your philosophies were great. And I love what you said about trust. If you can go into trust.
I was going to go ask about that. Right
Yeah. Well, you highlighted those parts for me and gave me homework.
I'm going through that going,
Yeah.
whoa, we're going to talk about that.
Right.
Well, there was a time, like when I was a kid, whoever had the whistle, whoever was at the front of the classroom, whoever had the title on their desk in the corner office, you automatically trusted that person because that was the chain of command.
Yeah.
And that it's not that way with Gen Z anymore. You have to earn their trust, and it's like a drop of water in a bucket. You earn it on a daily basis, and after 6 months you look up and that bucket's full. Now you can kick it over in a hurry, but we have to understand that we have to earn their trust now.
Right. You know, I'm going back your dad's generation in a way. I was coached by World War II veterans.
Yes.
I was. And the coaches that we played against were World War II veterans.
Yes.
So you know what your practices were like? Boot camp.
Yeah.
I mean, it was because they witnessed people saving their lives because they were trained to handle adversity, big time adversity, right? But no, the boot camp isn't working anymore.
No.
What you're talking about.
Yeah.
No, not only
Gen Z's not going to boot camp it.
No, we're not boot camping it. And then when we do stress them, and we do have to stress them because that's part of growing up. You have to learn how to deal with adverse situations. When we do stress them, we have to tell them beforehand, this is going to be hard. And here's why we are doing it. We're sharing the big picture.
Yeah.
And here are the traits that we are looking to develop through this stress.
I'm going back just, and this will bridge to right what you're saying. I mean, I can remember, here I am, and if one of those coaches said, we're doing this, you trusted them.
Yeah.
I mean, that was my generation. You know, hey, this is how you're going to do it. And if you're sitting there going, well, yes, sir. And you just did it because you sensed that they were in command.
Right.
When you were a coach, then you were in command.
Yeah.
It's not that easy anymore.
No, they
got to believe in you.
Yeah,
they got to believe in you, coach.
There's an art to leadership right now.
Yes.
Like, you have to be in command of the organization, but you have to also make every level feel like they're in a partnership.
Yeah.
And that is why we are seeing some people in this day and age can lead, and some their methodology is of another time, and it doesn't work. And in some cases, we see it flame out spectacularly on SportsCenter and in the local newspaper.
Yeah. This is something that I think every executive that I've talked to and anybody I know that is in a leadership position, they have trouble with. They're always going, young people these days. We're going to talk more about it because whether you're a parent, you're coaching, or maybe you are in charge of some sort of management position at work, I think you're going to want to hear Brian's examples and his stories when we return. Welcome back to Object of the Game. I'm Maureen Kyle with Chuck Kyle. We are talking with Brian Polian, Vice President of Athletics and National Engagement. We're in the middle of the conversation about leadership, which is just so key because, as you were talking about, leadership is different. Is it because leaders are different, or is it because of the generation that they're leading?
Oh, it's the generation that they're leading, for sure.
So it's not like leadership, the structure of leadership has changed. It's the generation that's listening.
Yes. And if, for example, this book that I wrote that I thought I was writing to educators and coaches, McDonald's has hired me 6 different times to fly all over the country and talk to their general managers and their owner operators, because 80% of their of their workforce is Gen Z. Yeah. And it is not their job to adjust to us. It is our job to adjust to them as leaders. And that has been kind of this process. And there's been, and your dad knows this because he's witnessed it and I've witnessed it. The people that can't adjust, it creates a vacuum of leadership. And then we force young people up the chain because they're great communicators and they understand the relationship part, and they know how to connect with young people. But what they lack is their 10,000 hours of expertise. They lack the calluses that only experience can bring.
Yeah.
And we are losing some young leaders that are going to be talented, that are going to be successful. They fail because they get thrust into positions too soon because the people in front of them couldn't get it figured out, which is why the challenge really is to those of us who were raised in another style and are still in leadership roles. We're the ones that have to adjust.
You know, using football coaching as
you guys are allowed to,
We're
both of
allowed-
you.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
So
son
I'm
of a
good.
football
I'm good.
coach. We're all football here.
right there, before we took that break, you mentioned competent. And to me, that's a responsibility
Yes.
of the leader. Okay, here's a group of young football players come in. Here's their first day and whatever. And okay, here's the playbook. Here's our defense. And they trust that what you have there, you have confidence in what you're doing. And if we do that well, we're going to feel success.
Yes.
And that's what Gen Z kind of wants from that, I would think.
Yes.
And if we're doing it and it's not working, you got a trust problem now.
Yes.
Because so you'll be up at 2 a.m. I was 2 a.m. You're playing Alabama or something like that, and we're playing for us, whatever. And you're going, I got to stop that play. I got to find a way to stop this or do this thing.
Yeah.
And you're up at 2 a.m. because why? You take on the responsibility of being competent. When you walk in there, they can trust what you do. And one of the beautiful things, I say this all the time, and I'll bump it over to you. At halftime, when things didn't go well in the first half, one of the greatest blessings you could ever have as a coach is you make adjustments and they're all sitting there going, yeah, coach. We can do that.
I think we all assume that when someone rises to a level of leadership that they can provide competency. Like we're all not we're not all experts in every field, but you'd like to think, okay, I'm going to surround myself with people that are. But you would be surprised. Maybe you wouldn't be. Our listeners would be surprised. There are a lot of bad coaches out there, and there are a lot of bad leaders out there. They're in leadership roles because they talk the talk and they look the part and they have all the buzzwords. But when push comes to shove, they don't have answers. And unfortunately, I think I know that's the case in coaching at every level, and it's probably the case in management in every field.
And I would think that.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I've found really, now that I'm an athletic director and I'm hiring people, it's really been an interesting exercise to kind of figure out, okay, will this person have the answers and it's not just, we're not talking about strategy. When crisis hits a program, will this person know how to handle pressure? Will they communicate? Will they keep their cool? Because ultimately, the leader's job is when everything is going hectic, we got to be the ones that stay calm and exude that confidence to everybody else.
What you're saying right there, I try to preach to. Here are these youth coaches, right?
Yeah.
And they played in high school maybe, and have these little kids, and here's this game going on, and you sit there and they lose their cool in this grade school game, and who's you can picture it, the yelling at the official, whatever, and one of the classics I always kid coaches about this. There are some lines I hear yelled out. What's going on out there? You're yelling to the kids. What's going on? They're got to be looking back. Coach, if you don't know what we're doing, what are we out here for?
Yeah.
Hit somebody out there. What are you telling a little kid that?
I will say this as we're having this conversation in full transparency.
Yeah.
On the sidelines, I was not always awesome. Like we are wired the way that we are wired. But I do think everybody reaches a point where you're like, okay, you know, and for me, unfortunately, it was not a moment in competition. It was a moment in crisis. When we suffered at Nevada an awful tragedy. We lost a student athlete in the summertime, and you know, when everybody's looking at you for leadership in what is really a horrific moment, that was like, okay, now I understand what this means to be in charge and what these jobs require. But yeah, it's this group of young people that we're dealing with right now is so unique and so different. And we could talk for an hour about all the ways that we have to adjust the way that we teach and communicate. And it's you know.
A football game has its ups, peaks, and its valleys, and there's moments when it's chaotic.
Yeah.
And who's supposed to stay calm?
Yeah.
You know, the coach has to stay calm, especially the head coach.
As long as the officials are behaving.
Well,
okay.
getting in trouble. Well, you know, there's I'm thinking of little kids.
Yeah.
He's in a stadium where, you know, how many millions of people are watching on television. And, you know,
and I'm thinking business leadership too as we're talking all of this. I know.
Who are chewing on their mouthpiece like this.
Yeah.
You know, watch out, coach. Right?
Yeah.
Very
Right.
goofy. And, you know, adults have to stay calm.
And it's interesting because I heard somebody put it this way too. When we were talking about social media, actually, and an expert that I had talked to, you know, for a news segment said that when kids these days, if you tell them how, you know, the algorithms work with social media and everything like that, that the kids, when they see Oz behind the curtain, you pull the curtain back, you show them that Oz, then they don't trust, you know, they're not fooled anymore. They're smarter than that. And the way you guys are talking about it too is that, you know, if they can see that the leader or the coach or something, if they don't have that trust and they're like, well, this person doesn't know what they're talking about, then they kind of, they don't have that relationship.
So it's that is when you mentioned pulling back the curtain, right?
Yeah.
So one of the big things I talk about in terms of what makes Gen Z unique, they absolutely seek authenticity because their whole lives they have been marketed to on their phones.
Yeah.
This is what the cool kids wear. This is what the cool kids listen to. Yes. And so they have grown up where they see right through that. So now if you're me and I still recruit, I recruit for every sport on our campus. When somebody comes in and says, who's your favorite rapper? Am I going to, you know, try to BS somebody and you know,
name some name you don't know?
Yeah. Like I'm Pearl Jam and Springsteen. That's who I am. So instead of trying to be fake and then seeing right through it, the answer is, all right, who do you like? I remember we had a safety at LSU, Major Burns, who was from Louisiana. Yeah. The Louisiana music culture is a thing unto itself. And we would play music before practice, and I didn't know a lot of it. And Major would say, hey, coach, you know who this is? Major, I got no idea. Yeah. It's NBA Youngboy. I'm like, all right. Do you like this? He's like, I love this guy. I'm like, all right. Airdrop me your top 3 songs. Yeah. So I'm not going to fake it, but I'm going to try to meet him where he lives. And if I don't like it, I don't like it. But Gen Z does not want us to try and fake it with them. They're so used to that. They want us to be authentic, be comfortable in your own skin, know who you are, and just try to meet them where they live.
Yeah, and you made in the book, you make a really good point. Stepping right with that is that, you know, coaches make mistakes.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, we make the bad call.
Yeah.
You know, there's the clock's moving. You got to go. You got to go. You make a call. Yeah. Not there. And coach, if the trust is there, really needs to turn to them and go, that was my mistake. I own that one, folks.
Absolutely. I mean, anybody in leadership.
They'll pick up pretty early. No, that was your call, coach.
Yeah.
You know, don't come on now.
They're not fooled.
You got to come across with that.
You absolutely have to. When I was leading a program, I used to tell the players all the time, if I make a mistake, I will get up in front of you and own it, and I will never sell you out to the media. I will never get up in front, even though it might be your fault. I will never get in front of a press conference and say, this guy screwed this up.
Yeah.
I will always protect them publicly. And when I screw up, I will get up in front of them. And it's amazing how many problems can be solved simply by getting up and saying, instead of trying to explain it away or just simply get up and say, guys, I'm human too. I mean, I made a mistake 2 months ago on our campus and stood up in front of a team and said, I absolutely was wrong. I should not have said what I said. And all I'm asking for is your grace. And at the end of it, everything's fine. As opposed to trying to explain that away. Don't be sensitive. You missed what I was saying.
Yeah.
Like, just, hey, I made a mistake. I own it.
See that right there? It's still in that circle of trust.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you're competent. Great. Hey, this coach knows what he's doing. Let's listen to what he said. Hey, he's human.
Yeah.
Oh, but he turns to us and says he's human.
Yeah.
Trust is highlighted there too.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That's a beautiful thing.
Let's face it, we're getting a masterclass in leadership, and we're going to take a quick break. More when we come back. Welcome back to Object of the Game. We are talking leadership with Brian Polian, the Vice President of Athletics and National Engagement for John Carroll University. We've just been talking about how different Gen Z is compared to other generations and how that has affected leadership for so many people, but especially coaching and anybody else who is dealing with this generation, whether it's the business world or wherever. But I think coaching, your experience across the board, it's been so insightful to hear what you think a leader needs, the qualities a leader needs to have. And I know you have a book. We've been talking about it. Dad, you said that time is what stood out to you.
Yeah, it's one of the key components. And not to spend a lot of issues with that right now, but everybody has time, but we can be, as Brian's talking about in his book, people can be very selfish about their time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there's people, Gen Z, that need your time.
Yes.
They really need your time.
Mm-hmm.
So we talk about how important it is to build connections, establish relationships. And one of the, I kind of said, okay, here are my foundational pieces of trying to build a relationship with a young person. And one of the first ones is time. Time it's our most valuable commodity. And when we dedicate time to another person, we are showing them you are important to me. Mm-hmm. And so it's got to start from there. If you're in a leadership role, by definition, you are trying to get other people to move. You're trying to get them to move their feelings, their production.
Yeah.
We're trying to move people in a certain direction. You can't do that if you don't invest time in them. So I have a son who's got some special needs. I actually, in his academic life, received an email from a teacher that said, only contact me between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. And I was like, well, this person does not understand their job.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, you are dealing with a student that's got challenges by definition.
Yeah.
And so that, to me, like, that is not good leadership in a situation when we're serving other people.
Yeah. And you talk about that if you can, I thought this was fascinating. The consumer leadership model and covenant leadership model, like, what are the differences? You really wrapped it up in those two definitions.
Yeah. So Gen Z expects us to have covenant relationships with them. So then, all right, what's the definition? The consumer one's easy to define. All right, I go to Jimmy John's. I like the number 11, but I don't want tomatoes. As long as Jimmy John's holds the tomatoes, I'm in a great relationship with them. Right?
Yeah.
They might put them on there once. I'll forgive that. They do it again, I'm leaving that relationship and I'm starting a relationship with Jersey Mike.
Right.
Yeah. But the relationship is 100% driven by what I receive. Are they meeting, is the other person in this relationship meeting my needs?
Yeah.
Well, then how does that equate to leadership? Do you treat the most productive person in your department and the least productive person the exact same way? Do you treat the best student, the A+ AP, the same way that you do the kid that struggles to get the C average? And you know, do you treat the most productive player on the team and the 85th player on the team the same way? Human nature would say if you don't think about it, you probably don't.
Yeah.
But the covenant relationship is a commitment to you, that no matter how you are doing on any given day, whether you're in a bad mood, a good mood, whether you're having a productive day, not a productive day, that I promise to you as your leader, I'm going to give you my best. I'm going to serve you no matter what.
Yeah.
And that's what Gen Z expects from us. And really, I think about that in terms of my relationship with my children, my relationship with my wife, Laura. Do I treat her differently if she's got dinner on the table or running around, or if she's in a bad mood?
Yeah.
Am I not going to be as dedicated to her? Like the covenant relationship, the people that matter to us in our lives, we owe them a covenant relationship. Gen Z expects it from us.
Right. You know, I end up using this a number of times and talking to people and so on. The idea, I always looked at coaching, that I served as the coach.
Yes.
A person serves as the CEO of the company. President of the United States serves as the president. And there's a reason why that word is there.
Yes.
Because of the covenant idea.
Exactly.
You're giving of yourself and you welcome that because that's what you believe in.
And you see it in the smallest little places that you'd never think. But when I watch, for example, I mean, I know my world, right? Like when I watch a football program where the head coach has to have different clothes than everybody else, and he has to eat first, and he has to have all this special treatment, as opposed to other places that I have been where, I know we probably have a lot of Ohio people listening to this. I worked for Jim Harbaugh. In my 1 year with Jim Harbaugh, my son was a newborn. And my wife and I had a housing issue in the middle of training camp where my wife had to move us.
Oh, wow.
In the middle of training camp. So I was of no use, right? We got to the bye week and Jim Harbaugh said, listen, I know that you and your wife had a really hard time while you were in camp, and you know, I'm happy this all worked out, but we're going to take you, his wife, Sarah, he said, Sarah and I are going to take Aiden for the night. We got you a hotel reservation in downtown San Francisco. I want you to go take your wife to this restaurant, set it all up. My son's first sleepover was with the head coach at Stanford. And Sarah Harbaugh clipped a picture and sent Aiden's walking down the hall and Jim's holding his hand.
Oh my gosh.
And that to me, Jim is a different personality and all those things. That was an example of leadership that I will never forget.
Yeah, that's
the rest
incredible.
of how many people I work for in my life would have said, I'm going to take your child for the night because you and your wife need to get 24 hours off on your own.
Yeah, that is a service mentality. Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah. When the word love is used so often, and people connect it with romantic ideas.
Yes.
Okay, that's a category. Let's not, but, I here's admitting as a dad, I didn't say, hey, I love you, honey, a million
No, we're
times.
not that type of family. No, we're not. No.
No scars. We're fine.
It's fine.
But in all honesty, if they don't know that I love them by what I'm trying to do, then why do I say it?
No, this is a great example because I am the athletic director and I am not with these programs every day. But when I do get in front of them, one of the last things I will say is I love each and every one of you and I'm proud of each and every one of you. The concept of love is what people misconstrue. Right. And when I used to say as a coach, I've loved every player I've ever had the opportunity to coach. People roll their eyes like, no, you don't. I didn't say I liked every one of them. There's a lot of them I didn't like, and there's a lot that didn't like me. Yeah. But love does not always mean a romantic state of being. It's not always emotional. love is service. Love is dedication. Again, it's the thought of the covenant relationship that no matter who you are and how you're doing, I'm going to serve you. I take the stance that discipline is an expression of love. Setting high standards and holding people accountable to them. Because if we care about a person, we're not going to send them off into the world, allowing them to do whatever they want with the expectation that there's going to be no consequence.
That's a disservice.
That is that is not an expression of love.
Right.
And so the analogy I use when I speak publicly all the time is I am confident every day that my wife loves me. I'm confident in that notion. But just this morning, she was not in love with me.
Yeah.
And because because she's such a good communicator, she made that abundantly clear that at that moment, she was not in love with me. But I am always confident.
There's a floral shop on the way home tonight, buddy.
Yeah, but that's, I mean, I'm sure you get it too. I get it wherever I go, where former players will always describe the feeling that they have about you, Dad, as like not just coach, but it was like, here's my extra father figure.
Yes.
You know, because you did have that relationship with people, and you did serve them and showed them that type of love through coaching and dedication.
People ask me all the time, what do I miss about my old life? I coached Division 1A college football for 25 years.
Yeah.
That's all I ever dreamed of doing. And I'm in a much different role now. And what I miss, I do miss the competition, but what I miss the most is that when you're with a very special group, there is a love that exists there that is abstract. It's very hard to describe. You only know it when you feel it, and you don't feel it in the middle of a football game. You feel it on a Wednesday night in the locker room when, like last night, our team's preparing for the playoffs. It's 42 and raining sideways. And there is a bond and something that we just went through together. It happens on a bus trip. It happens over a meal when it's just you in a hotel and nobody else is around. That is what I miss the most. And that is, I found it very difficult to replace because I am not with them every single day.
Yeah.
When our programs win, I celebrate it, but I feel adjacent to it.
Yeah.
I'm not, and that has been honestly really, really hard to replicate. And it's the great joy of working with people is being able to feel those moments.
Yeah.
When this team, they made the playoffs, believe me, 25 years from now, they'll have a reunion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And within 2 minutes, it's like they're back in the locker room.
Yeah.
I've witnessed these things. Guys coming back, 25. And it just takes 2 minutes, and they're like seniors in high school.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But that's how much you're talking about.
That's why it's so special.
Bond together like that, and it lasts
forever.
Yeah.
forever.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
We haven't gotten to the vocab word yet, and we're nearing the end of the show.
Right.
So when we come back, my dad always gives that list of vocabulary words. We're going to put Brian to the test. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're missing a lot during the commercial breaks. We were just talking about a football game, an Ignatius game that took place at now the Polian Family Field at John Carroll University. We should have been rolling before this. Go ahead.
It was not turfed, and a horrible rain stormed the whole day, and coming off the lake.
Yeah, so I played at I went to high school at a place called St. Francis High School in Buffalo, New York. Yeah. Right on the shores of Lake Erie, hit a 9-iron from the front door into the water.
Oh my gosh.
Right. So you would get a lot of lake effect.
Yeah.
So I believe that I was coaching at the University of Central Florida at the time, and St. Ignatius went to St. Francis, and the field was a muddy mess. And so in our school's history, I think we beat Coach Kyle once or twice. And one of these times occurred when I was coaching at Central Florida, and we were literally dodging a hurricane. And I'm at Buffalo Wild Wings celebrating a big Red Raider win over the Wildcats, which never happened. So, we...
There's the one I was thinking was when I said the kid getting off the bus said,
Yeah.
"Hey, what ocean is that?" It was blowing up on there was what I mean, it's a tie game.
Yeah.
And the wind is,
Yeah,
obviously
40 miles an hour off
and
the water.
we have to go into overtime, right? And we stopped them. I mean, how many? And we have a field goal kicker that goes on to kick for the Air Force. I mean,
Wow.
he's really good.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm sitting there going, all right. So I wasn't a golfer, and I still not really, but okay. And I had to go, all right, see it? Aim over there.
Uh-huh.
And it curves the thing in, and we can go, okay, we can go home.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Oh, that's wild. Well, all right. Every week, we usually give our guests some vocabulary words, things that from their sports experience, whether it's coaching, playing, whatever it may be, how it shaped who they are today and how it is shaping their career. So, Brian, you've gotten a whole bunch of vocabulary words. And it's a long list. Let's start with the first one that jumps out to you.
Problem an English teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the first thing that jumped out to me was courage, because I think about our young people today, the courage that it takes to leave your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And that is a constant battle that we're fighting, that it is okay to fail. And when we fail in athletics, we do so publicly. There's a scoreboard at the end of the field. And so and I think about courage and leadership and the courage to make bold decisions and not simply, go with what the common opinion might be. The second thing that stood out to me, and I try very hard with any group of young people that I'm working with, is gratitude. I think about the men and women that work on our campus in the custodial, the people that work in the cafeteria, the people that get our fields ready for competition. You never know how somebody's doing in their lives. And to simply turn around and take 10 seconds to say, thank you for what you do. I am grateful.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be here without you. The impact that can have on somebody's life. I tell our kids all the time, everybody's got stuff. I use a different word when I say it to them. Everybody's got stuff in their life. You just don't know what it is.
Yeah.
And that 10 seconds of being grateful. And the other part of it too is we live in a world of, I got a buddy that plays at Ohio Wesleyan. Boy, you should hear about all the Nike stuff they get, and they get this and they get that. And we would do this at Notre Dame all the time. Like, hey, I got a buddy that plays at Ohio State. They get steak every night. And like, all right, like we're not going down that road here.
Yeah.
We're going to be grateful for what we have, because I think comparison is the thief of joy.
Yep.
And so we're going to be grateful for what we have, because we're not digging ditches.
Yeah.
We're competing, and we're on these beautiful campuses and having a great time.
Yeah. And again, that's where, some of the social media in this generation is constantly comparing themselves.
Yes.
Because it's right there. It's in their hand. All they need to do is look on their phone and see what somebody else is getting that they're not getting, or somebody else's lifestyle that they don't have.
Before games, I just, when you mentioned being grateful, before every game, here's the officials. And they do their thing. Hey, with this, and you go over stuff. And then at we end it, I always said, I want to thank you guys for what you're doing. Yeah. I want to thank you. And a lot of them go, no one ever says that.
Mm-hmm.
Did it buy you a call every once in a while?
I got one. I thought I got one. But
no, it's
those guys don't have to be there.
No,
but we don't have the game without them.
I mean, how hard is it? We play. We go play in our stadium, and we've got the cleaning staff there on a Saturday afternoon, cleaning things up. And, I'm fortunate in my life that we've worked really hard, and my wife has done a great job. And financially, I don't have a lot of concerns. So for me to take the person that cleans out our press box on a Saturday and say, here's $20. Would you please buy lunch for yourself on the way home? And, what's that cost me? 30 seconds and $20.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm telling somebody is that I'm really grateful for what you do. And we'd be lost without you. And the impact of that, right? We call it emotional currency. How much emotional currency can I build up with the people
way of
around
wording
us?
that.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, another segment we do on this show. He's English teacher background, and the quote was for people who got in trouble, but now we're using it for guests of
You don't
what
have to write it.
you don't have to write it, Brian.
If you didn't have your homework 50 times.
Yeah.
For next.
But he chooses a quote that he thinks
Well,
would be good for our guests.
And I'm going to say this again. I can't always guarantee it fits what we're talking about. You know,
You've done a good job so far.
Okay. And I knew he was going to talk about leadership.
Yeah.
It's clearly with the book, with everything going on. And okay, so this is from the play Julius Caesar, Tragedy, and so on. But okay, this is actually the character Brutus, and it's a soliloquy, and it's an important one in the play because he's standing alone. That's what a soliloquy is. You're standing alone, sharing your thoughts to the audience, right? It's where he decides that it's only through murdering Julius Caesar to solve the problem.
Yeah.
In Shakespeare, that doesn't work ever. It doesn't work in society, but it doesn't work in Shakespeare if you decide you're going to murder someone to make it better. It doesn't work. But he comes to that decision, our country would be better if must be by his death. And as he rolls along, he makes this statement. Now, ready? The abuse of greatness is when it disjoins remorse from power. Now, you had to look up remorse back then in Shakespeare's day meant mercy. So it said the abuse of greatness is when it disjoins mercy from power. And the idea that if you're a leader, right, there's going to be successes and there's going to be kids just not getting it done. You can't abuse that relationship as we've been talking about.
Yeah.
You can't abuse that.
Yeah.
You know, it please, and it's in your book, and it fits this quote, and that's why I went to this. You know, never, if you're going to, what can I say, correct a kid strongly, make sure if it's about the play he did or something, but not about him. You know, if the kid feels you're, really attacking him, you're going nowhere.
Yeah.
It's a disaster.
We say all the time, we attack problems. We do not attack people.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the abuse of power. And that's what poor Julius Caesar, Act 3, Scene 1, A2 Brute.
Yeah.
Because he was abusing power.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Yeah. Yeah.
I certainly hope I do not find the same fate in my current role.
It's a bloody Act 3, Scene 1.
Right. Well, I love this. This has been such a great conversation about leadership. I think it applies to anybody, whether, like we've been saying, coaches, parents, people who are just in that position, or maybe even looking to get into that position. So Brian Polian, the Vice President of Athletics and National Engagement, John Carroll, coach, author, the book, hold it up again, Dad, so that we can get the title.
He does have
And this is, now there's Coaching and Teaching Generation.
Right.
Brian, thank you so much. This has
Thank
been
you.
so great. Yeah.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks for watching Object of the Game. I'm Maureen Kyle with Chuck Kyle. And if you want to see all of our episodes of Object of the Game, all you have to do, follow Big Play on Twitter, which is now called X, Big Play X, Big Play's YouTube page, the free Big Play app available on iOS and Roku. And we'll see you right back here next week.